Hello, encouragers. I'm Rebecca Scott, wife, mother of 4, author, and owner and designer of Rebecca Scott Designs. I'm here to encourage you, to make you feel the I can do this spirit each and every day of our awesome journeys to fulfill those many important roles. I believe we are fully equipped to execute, and I will provide you with as much knowledge and practices and systems as I can to help you understand just what I know you can do. Execute. We got this. Hey, encouragers, on today's podcast, I have a frequent guest and a frequent friend, that's what I will call you, on the podcast today to talk to us a little bit about how do we pivot during a crisis. And we are on, I would like to hope and pray and know that this is the tail end of a crisis. I didn't use the term crisis just because it is such a strong term and I'm big on words, which you as the listeners really know that. But you can't be in denial. I mean, that would not be wise as well. But I ended up calling it a season. During this season, what are you doing for your family, your life, your work? And I talk frequently about the systems. I believe all of our lives revolve around 4 systems: your me system, your family system, your work system, and your food system. So we've had a couple of podcasts to work through each system. And I thought it'd be really great to have Clint Brown on to talk to us a little bit. And he's always whole life anyways. He's also serial entrepreneur, never divides work and family. They are all in one. To talk to us like, how do we pivot during this season? What are some things that we can do that we do have control over? So welcome our guest, Clint Brown. Thanks, Clint.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm super excited that we found a common schedule time, being as we're both homeschooling experts right now.
I love that when I called Clint to ask, he's like, I can't in the morning. That's when we're doing homeschool. And then I feel like you confessed it. You're like, I got to tell you, I'm over. Well, you didn't say you're over homeschooling. I admitted, like, I'm getting at the end of it. And you're like, oh no, I'm doing social studies by them picking up
trash in the neighborhood. Hey, we pulled dandelions, cut the roots, and roasted dandelion root for tea. That feels like biology.
Absolutely. You know what? And Clint,
we studied Chinese culture, and I just took pictures on their iPad and submitted it to the teacher. Said, "Here's their assignment for the day." I don't even know what their assignment was.
I do like the rogueness of that. I appreciate that. But Clint, also tell us quick, and we'll put it in the show notes for you. What is your Instagram? Is it called a handle?
Yeah, my Instagram handle. I think. Well, my phone is like doing the iPhone reset thing right now. I think it's just Clinton Reed Brown.
Okay, you got to check this out.
Yeah. So yeah, my Instagram is not that interesting of an Instagram unless you pay attention to the stories. That's what happens in the day is pretty bizarre.
But I love it because it always involves food, kiddos, work,
maybe some weird gardening project.
And you always are so have a unique perspective on things with humor. It's like, does anybody else tell me somebody else sees the humor in this?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are some things that you would tell the listeners right now as we're managing the same sort of systems that you are managing right now? A family, business, working from home, and we've never done that before.
Yeah. I think that the first thing I've been telling everybody, which may feel like the silliest answer, but across the board, I've been giving this advice. I get a lot of entrepreneurs calling me, and I've actually probably had 8 come sit on my porch like at 9 o'clock at night. Oh my gosh, I need to talk to somebody till 11 o'clock at night. And the first thing I always say is you got to breathe. Like in times of crisis, we have a natural biological response to actually hold our breath. Hey, beautiful child walking by. And so I think it's just can we breathe into the moment? Can we actually literally be in the process of remembering to breathe in our day? Because we find ourselves so tense, this crazy letter came, then we got this crazy news off Twitter. And now, I had today, a local entrepreneur send me a rant. I got this long text, and then the next text was, sorry for ranting. He just had to tell somebody. And it's the shipment had been delayed because the credit card didn't match this thing. And now his customers all have to, it's that stuff we're all dealing with. Mm-hmm. And it's just okay, can we breathe? Can we sort of ground ourselves in the moment? And then I think that there's a phrase that if I were to ever get a tattoo, and I don't have any ink, I'm not a tattoo person. I don't know why. I can't spend the money on it. I can't bring
Me
myself.
neither. Me neither. We're on the
It's
same
like,
page.
yeah, it's like, I'd rather go out to a nice meal than have a butterfly or whatever.
And I don't want to be 80 stuck with an ugly one.
Yeah.
Everything's a phase.
That's right. I had a professor say that it's a permanent reminder of a temporary feeling. And I've just sort of hung with that. And so there's a phrase, though, in Latin is sub specie eternitas, which basically translates into in light of eternity. In light of eternity. And I think that in these times, the first thing you got to do is get perspective. So step one is breathe and be centered in where you're at. Just know, like, I'm in my house. I've got food for tonight's dinner. Like, can you be here right now, right wherever you're at? So, like, I'm in my office in my basement. You know, and that's when someone's having a panic attack, the first thing you do is you ask them, like, where are you? And it helps them get outside of their own body. So be where you're at and then zoom way out. Like in video game world, it's like God mode. How can you have a really big perspective, right? In light of eternity is what's going on in my business. In perspective, what are we talking about here? My son was having a bit of a anxiety attack. Shall we say, yesterday we were making a bee hotel, a weird thing you would see on my Instagram account for carpenter bees. And he was having a hard time drilling the right holes and using the power tools. And I just said, you know, at your funeral, you get 3 good stories. That's it. I've been to a lot of funerals. You get 3 good stories at your funeral. Yes. Is today going to be one of those stories, or will we not even remember this moment in 14 days? Is this it? Are we picking now? Are we picking the Beehive, the Bee Hotel of 2020 as the Miles Brown legacy story? Or should we devalue this moment just back down to reality? And so I think even though we're in sort of crisis, some people really are. Like family members have died.
Absolutely.
They're screwed financially. So if you're in one of those situations,
yes,
that's the right word. A lot of people are really inconvenienced by this. It's a real pain in the rear end. They're really dipping into their savings. They're like stress testing their business and their staff and their customers. It feels really uncomfortable. But in light of eternity, how big is this? And I think once you know where you're at, like how big are you according to all of time and space? So this problem is big, but it's probably not going to go in a history book anywhere. My name won't get mentioned.
No,
they're not. You know, I'm not going to be in Oprah's next magazine about COVID. Then I think you can begin to have a perspective on your customers. So if you can't ground yourself, you're going to have a really hard time understanding where your customers are moving. And that's the key to figuring out how to pivot your business is you're going to have to meet the need of your customer. There's something called human-centered design. And it's the idea, surprise, surprise, that we need to make products that are actually good for people to use. Seems simple, right? But we're all products of multiple generations where companies dream up products and then tell us we need them, right?
Yes.
So you do human-centered design and you don't know it. That's because you actually go to shows. You actually see how women use your product. You watch them wear it. You watch them try it on. You see they go right shoulder, then left shoulder, or you see that they always do the zipper this way. And so you understand that human piece of it. And in human-centered design, there's 3 sort of overlapping circles in the Venn diagram. The most important one, and I can send you a graphic that people can look up or just Google human-centered design. The top one is desirability. And it's basically like, what does your customer actually want or need right now? And most people don't know because they don't talk to their customer. They think they do, but they don't. They do transactions with their customer. They take customer support phone calls and emails, but they're not asking them, hey, if you could wave your magic wand and have Rebecca Scott solve a problem for you and have a better product for you, if you could fix anything about our products, what would it be? You might find out that they wanted a backpack or they wanted a smaller bag or they need travel accessories. So I think where you've been sort of intuitively wise because you actually go and dance with your customers at all these live shows and have for decades, other businesses really get trapped behind the counter. They really get trapped behind the computer. And some of them don't even know anymore because they ship so much online. They don't know these people's faces.
Or trapped in a trend.
Yeah.
You know, without like the customer is first. You have to ask them first. I've said frequently on the podcast that I had a $10,000 mistake because I asked the wrong audience. I asked my sales reps what we should give to the customers. We made this $10,000 catalog that bombed instead of asking my customers, what do you need? Well, they spoke loudly and clearly, and it was the website. So we were able to pivot. But you're absolutely right. That's exactly the questions that we need to be asking.
So here's where the pivot comes, though. Here's where you need to be grounded first and in tune with your customer second. Then you're left with the decision. Am I willing and capable to change to meet the customer's needs? I have a company that I was doing some work for that makes and sells phones for offices, like, where it's like put you on hold and send you to some other part of the building. You know what I'm saying? Like a doctor's office phone or whatever. The coronavirus thing hits. The manufacturing plant is in Wuhan, China. They don't make phones anymore for the time being. So the company pivoted and started making face masks. So all these salespeople who've been selling phones are now trying to sell personal protection equipment. That's a pretty large pivot.
Oh my word!
You're switching whole industries like literally overnight because the manufacturing plant changed.
Did they? This is just like background out of my curiosity. Did they already have some of the equipment to make that change?
Apparently, they could retool some of their equipment to be able to and keep their people employed. Huge. We're talking huge company. Mm-hmm. And so that is hard because if you view that your product is you and your solution is you, you've got this emotional tie to making hamburgers the way you make them or making purses the way you make them. Mm-hmm. And the market may have gone, and the market may not care anymore or may not care temporarily. Mm-hmm. And you have to be really willing to listen and say, what am I willing to do for this person? I think there's a story you and I know well, which is the Good Samaritan story.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Don't be the first two people who came along, saw a customer in need, and were unwilling to shift to meet the needs of a customer right there.
Yeah.
Be the third one who came along, the Good Samaritan who came along, and went against culture to do the right thing for the end customer. And I think that you could find the space inside of you, but I think that's where I'm finding entrepreneur struggles. They'll say, well, I don't make tachos. I do fine dining. Okay, well, right now you're going to be broke doing fine dining, or you're going to make really yummy tacos.
That's such a good illustration. That's kind of my concept of the 1%ing it. So you can't do fine dining right now. What can you do at 10% of fine dining? It would be grilling hamburgers or making tacos. So let's just chunk it down to what you can do in this moment.
Yeah, I think that is almost like a really private. The reason I find entrepreneurs aren't pivoting is actually like deep inside them. It's like what they believe about themselves and what they believe to be true with the market. The ones who are pivoting are just saying, you know what? I'm in the business of serving my customer base. And if they want tacos or bed pillows or, better curriculum for their homeschool kids, I'll figure out how to do it.
Absolutely.
Because I want to keep them as customers.
I love that. And if there is things to look on the good side of what this is, because we have to take what it is the amount of creativity and synergy that is coming out of these different groups where I'm like, this is amazing. When we are challenged to the point where like we cannot make our product anymore, which thankfully, bless me, that has not been my ordeal, or we realize, you know what, I was never serving my customer the way I should have. Companies, families, we're all asking, I have to change. This has to be different. And it's kind of a beautiful evolution that is happening even within our family units where we're going, wait a minute, this house is huge. We do not need this big of a house. Or this house is tiny. Like I love all the creativity and the slowing down of what really matters that's going to come out of this, especially for businesses.
I'm curious. I think on the business front, it'll be really interesting. I think it's a good chance, no matter how long this takes, if it's all done tomorrow or if it takes the rest of the year, there's going to be some things that just we never see again or never see done the same way. Absolutely. And you and I are old enough to remember, like, to explain to our kids that you used to be able to go to the airport and not go through security and the kids could just wait at the gate seems preposterous to them. But it was true when we were kids. Things happened. It's not true now.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see some changes like that. I think we're going to see some ingenuity out of it. But I think the thing that's most interesting, and you and I haven't had a chance to catch up, but like, think of it like your kids are in their formative years while this is taking place.
Mm-hmm.
And how will they be flexible in certain ways or new ways or be creative because the original opportunities that were there for them have shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to see their parents and be ingenious, and companies do really crazy things to survive. I think it'll be really interesting to see like the kids that are 8, 9, 10, 15 years old now when they become adults.
I totally agree. We could go off on a whole stint on the parenting.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Because we were home with them so much too, and Clint is homeschooling all 4 of his, I'm doing the same. I am learning the different learning styles of each of the kiddos and going, whoa, I've been doing this all wrong. You know, flashcards don't work for Rosalind, but if I sat her down with a ruler and a pencil and told her to make a 5x4 square, doing a heartbeat, and she could tell me how many square inches were in it. So she's more, I don't know enough of the learning terms, but it's got to be hands-on.
Yeah, kinesthetic.
Yes. And so it's really interesting to me. I'm like, man, so it's already helping me to know which child to pick for which chore because of the way that they learn and what makes them smile and what makes them come alive. You couldn't do that without this season of being able to concentrate on how they learn.
I think that if we're to go back to entrepreneurs for a second, I think that when people are in crisis, more often than not, they're reacting to the unfamiliar set of feelings that they're feeling. Mm-hmm. Not the fact that they can't handle it, but they feel like they can't handle it because it's new. Okay. For those of you like you who've had multiple children, when you're pregnant with the first kid, it's all a new journey. Every pain is new, and you think, is this right? Is this wrong? Is this a good pain, a bad pain? Am I healthy? Am I not? Is this labor? Are they Braxton Hicks? What's going on? Mm-hmm. Because you're unfamiliar. By the time you get to the 4th one, you're not even mentioning it to anybody.
Right.
Right? You're just like, oh, old news. This is how we roll. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, this is their first sort of like pressure point, stress test, run at half capacity, run at a half team. Mm-hmm. And they're nervous because they can't orient themselves to the set of feelings and circumstances. But that doesn't mean that they can't survive and they can't thrive in it. They feel unfamiliar. They feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. I think you have to sort of, I have a friend, Joe Obermuller, who's a theater professor, and he talks to his students about the only way to be a good actor is there's going to be a line of uncomfortable, and you have to lean into the discomfort to get through to acting. Acting isn't comfortable. It's not comfortable to pretend to be somebody else.
True.
But you have to sort of get through into the other side. And I think some entrepreneurs, because of life circumstances, and they have a higher maybe adversity quotient, right? They can handle adversity better. Mm-hmm. Can get there quicker. They can go, okay, this really sucks. They go out and have a panic attack. Like I can see you get really frustrated, go for a jog, do 1,000 burpees and go, well, got to change, guys.
So true.
Right?
Yep.
Other people have been drinking for 3 weeks going, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And everyone has their coping mechanism, but at some point you got to go, okay, I have to change and get my butt in gear on something. I've got to go a direction. And it's going to be uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar, not because you're doing it wrong.
Right.
And I think if you're okay with that, and you can give that the grace and space it needs to, then you're able to move forward with not every day going, something's wrong. This is hard. Well, yeah, it's hard. None of us have been here before.
Well, I like that you're saying it's uncomfortable, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. You know, immediately say it's not working and we try to move on to the next thing or give up. And I'm like, no. Keep circling this. What part of what you are doing is working, whether it's for your family or for your business, something is working. If you're still moving cash from point A to point B, what is working? How can you accelerate that or at least keep that up? Don't just give up. I had a lot of artisan friends that really, this just floored them. They didn't know what we would do without shows. And I thought, gosh, I immediately thought I need to encourage them more on, you knew you had to have a website. We have to have a website in today's age. We can't just go to see the customers, which that's one of my favorite parts because I get to see them and problem solve with them and geek out over a teal zipper and whatever combination they came up with. But I thought, you guys, you have to. So their pivot is that they are creating websites, but their devastation was so low. I thought, wow, we also have to build more grit into entrepreneurs, into artisans is like, guys, let's dig in deeper.
Yeah, I think that when you have no stress, you get more and more fragile. You think of like trees that never deal with high wind, and the first high wind comes along, they fall over, versus the trees on your shelter belt have wind hitting them all the time. It would take a tornado to take down the shelter belt. It makes me think of a story in the year 2010. Let me think. I think 2010. I called my grandfather on his birthday. He would have been 80. So I called him on his 80th birthday. But they don't have voicemail. They're 80, right? So it just rings and rings and rings like it's 1987. So I call him back at dinner. It rings and rings and rings. And I know they go to bed at like 6. So I just, whatever, I'll call him next. So I call him the next day. And I say, where the heck were you? Was like out partying all day or what? And he said, no, I was helping your aunt, his daughter, bale hay, straw, bale something in the fields. It's July in Oklahoma. So whatever you're baling in July in Oklahoma, right?
Yeah.
And in the pasture. And I said, who was doing what? Like, you were driving the tractor and Uncle Greg was like throwing the bales. He's like, no, Greg was driving the tractor. I was throwing the bales. This is my 80-year-old grandfather who's 150 pounds, by the way. I said, how many bales did you throw? He said 376 of the smaller rectangle 80-pound bales. I'm like, that's a day's work. He said, yeah, I stacked them all in the barn by myself too when I was done. And I said, how were your hands? And he's like, oh, I just destroyed them. I was wearing leather gloves. And he's like, it was so great. I got to work so hard. Dinner tasted so good. And my hands look like I've accomplished something.
Oh.
Now, that is it. Had you picked any 17-year-old strapping boy, pulled him off the couch and playing video games, had him throw 376 bales in July, Oklahoma heat, and then stack them in the barn until 10 o'clock at night, he would not look at his hands and go, that was a good day.
No.
That was a great day of hard work. I accomplished something. That's perspective. The old man's tough, but he's saying, this adversity is proof that I accomplished something.
Yeah.
And someone who's inexperienced would look at and say, this adversity is proof something is wrong. The same exact data. The bloody hands and the calluses to him were proof of right, and to a young guy it might be proof of something wrong. And I think that people are assessing. I think that you, being a little more seasoned entrepreneur, even though you're young, might go into one of these other artisans' business, look at the same data set and say, wow, you're kicking butt. What an opportunity. And they're looking at the data saying, it's all falling apart. It's the same numbers.
Interesting.
So some of that, I think, is perspective. And if you're someone who's listening to this, watching this, and you're like caught in this little negative loop that like, you're somehow a special victim of all these circumstances, I think that you might need to get somebody who doesn't think like you and say, can you look at these numbers or what's going on? Because like, I'm like caught in a vortex here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it might be that like it's just a perspective difference. It's the same bloody hands and worn out gloves.
Yeah.
And things might be going great. You might be strong and healthy and capable at 80-year-old, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting because the same data, but just choosing a different perspective. It's like when I was talking with a friend too, and she's like, I realized during this season that I think I worship control. I just really like control.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, oh, I think I really worship comfort. But really, it's probably the same thing. Mine was just a prettier word.
Yeah.
Like, I thought comfort was I could control when we were going to do this, and it was comfortable to go to work, and it was comfortable to put the kids on the bus, and it was comfortable to pick them up. I just chose the word comfort, and she happened to choose the word control. I'm like, I think we're saying the same thing. We're just choosing one's a prettier word.
Yeah. I think the perspective really helps here. And I mean, I'll tell you an activity I've been doing. I feel like all of my activities are really accessible. Like every day I go on a long walk. I get like 3 miles or more in just to like, what's the weather? Are people moving around town? Like you're out in the country. It's beautiful if you walk in any direction. Are people planting?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What noises do I hear? What do I smell? Right? And that just gets you out of your element. Check in with someone else and quit. Like if you're caught in the sort of like negative news cycle, negative Facebook post cycle, or whatever, you might be putting yourself in a position to where you're sort of beating yourself up emotionally, and then you got to go be successful and creative and run a business. You might not have that gear. You might need to sort of cut that off a bit.
Absolutely.
Be around some positive thinkers who are doing things. There are people in your town, in your community right now that are having their best days ever. their best years ever right now in business. I've got a buddy who runs a bicycle shop, and he says every day is his best Saturday ever.
Really?
Because people want bicycles right now. Now, who would have guessed
Yes.
that a pandemic would equal positive bicycle sales? But he's like, dude, I literally can't build bikes fast enough, sell them fast enough, fix them fast enough.
That's what just gets me so excited. I can feel it through my body. Is like, even coming out of this, people are going to experience booms that they have never experienced because people got perspective on something where they're like, I want a bike as a family, so we're all going to buy new bikes. Or I'm going to take every calligraphy class I can possibly think of because this is what I want to do as an art form. Like, we are going to experience so many interesting shifts in large industries that didn't think they could shift. Vision, dental, insurance.
Oh, sure.
So many things. And then just the everydayness, retail. And I love that America is now finally a little more flexible on 2-day shipping and major Target.com and Walmart.com. Like, we are more interested in doing, which those are necessary, believe me. I'm a family of 6, I get it. But I love that we're being flexible about, oh, you have curbside pickup? Oh, you don't have curbside pickup, you just have, I call you or I go through, like, we're okay with it taking us maybe 2 or 3 different unfamiliar steps to get the product than just the prime button. And yeah. I love that it's making us more flexible to get the product and to honor whatever it is that the company is offering.
Yeah, I think the sort of fat and happy era is a bit over. Like we had a sort of fat and happy decade.
What do you mean by fat and happy?
Like the economy was on an upward trend for a decade. Life in America on average was relatively stress-free compared to, we weren't going through the 1969 race riots, right? We weren't sending people off to Vietnam. We weren't going through World War II. There wasn't a polio outbreak. Like, we've had pretty positive trend for a long time, and people get really comfortable because it's predictable. Next year will be better. I'll make more money. I'll get a raise. Right? You know, and now it's like all that kind of it got turned off. It just disappeared, a lot of those things. And now people are having to see where re-engage in a lot of these processes. They have to engage in their own dietary health needs. They got time to think about it, and the grocery store doesn't have what they normally buy.
Right.
There's no ramen. There's no Campbell's soup. There's no Chef Boyardee on the shelf at Hy-Vee. So you got to quit eating that crap.
Yeah.
It's gone.
And like, there's not the ingredients to make our Midwestern casseroles.
No, and like the gardening world has exploded. Like greenhouses are selling so many tomatoes and so much stuff, seed starter sets, because people want to be engaged. So I think that's sort of a blessing in disguise. Not that I would say, well, in the future, when things are getting crazy, let's have a pandemic where a lot of people buy because that'll reset America. Right? I'm not a bio-fascist or something right here, right? It's just that, like, I think that you're right in that, like, the most millionaires America ever made was coming out of the Great Depression, right? And it was the people who decided to take action during the Great Depression, not drink themselves to death. And so for those entrepreneurs who have that gear, I think it's going to be a bit of culling the herd, right? There's like the calves you keep and the calves you don't sort of thing.
Yes.
There's going to be some people who've been playing entrepreneur who weren't really cut out for it. And that's actually better for them and us. Like, if you're supposed to be a school teacher or a property manager or work in a dental clinic and crush that, go do that. Because we need small business owners who are really all in. But the ones who are really all in have had a refiner's fire, and they're going to be really, really all in and could go into a really steep growth curve because people are going to come out, want to resume some normal life. You're going to have better products. You're going to be a little leaner. You know, like there's some stuff you've just cut out. You just said, you know what, we're not doing that anymore. It's not critical. Like this year, you figuring out how to hit your goals without your show circuit being what it was. Is going to be a task, but you're going to be one sharp cookie by the end of the year because you'll figure it out.
That, and I think that too, right there is a perspective too. It was like, well, I can sit and cry about this, with which, full disclosure, you guys, absolutely. That is the bread and butter, is when I head to those shows. But there's nothing I can do about it. It's not like they picked me out of the basket and said, you can't come. Nobody can come. So moving on, there's nothing I can do about it. But what kind of awesome opportunities could we have live that will change how people design? So let's have a private design your own Facebook event. And so while yes, it made me sad and mad and all kinds of emotions, I thought, well, what am I going to do? But okay, that's very hard break. Here's what I got to do moving forward. So stay tuned. It's going to be exciting. And I have a theory, and I got to ask you as a dad, with the amount of growing, like right now, possibly depending on how this season has affected you, you may not feel like you're growing, but coming out of this, you are going to naturally grow because you're changing your systems, as we talked about, or your business or whatever. I have a theory. I think we're going to experience some huge children, tall children coming out of this.
Okay.
Because Gus is an athlete and very active, just like Miles. Like, you name it, he's going to conquer it and try to do it the best he can. So he'd run to activities. He'd be up at 6:30, go to bed about 10, maybe a little before 10. Now he goes to bed like 9:30, 10, because he's wiped. He's been outside doing all the things farm kids get to do. And then he wakes up around 9, 10. I try not to let him sleep till 11, but he's tried that a couple times. I was like, no. And he has grown 3 inches since January.
Yeah.
And now, obviously, he's a 13-year-old, so he's growing anyways. But I'm like, this could be interesting to see what our children in the ages of 10 to 15 do after they're eating better because they're at home, and I make a lot of whole foods, and they're just making better. He's eating more. He's eating a lot. But what do you think about, like, the growing, obviously the growing in our businesses, but in our children? What's going to happen?
I think that it could be, your children are blessed that they have you as a mom and there's healthy options and you keep them active. I think there's a fair number of children who are just like left at home to like play video games during this time too.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
Not every kid has your sort of kids experience of family on the farm, but it wouldn't surprise me in the least in 10 years there to be a study and say, see this little blip right here? That's when all those kiddos stayed home. Now where kids come into the picture, I think is you're going to see a lot of kids created during this time, and the maternity wards are going to be really busy.
This will be the new baby boom.
I don't know, when would those babies be here? January, February, something like that? Yeah. So I think that 2021 could have, if there are parents who are baby boomers, these will be baby boomer number 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, but it'll be interesting to see how our kids fare. I know my kids think that like snacking is an all day. Yeah. It's one event that transpires the entire day. Oh yeah. And so they're certainly consuming enough calories to grow a lot. That's for sure.
Clint, you got to adapt my principle that I tell the listeners frequently is like, there are snack times and then the kitchen is closed, meaning you don't open the doors to the refrigerator or the cabinets. The kitchen is closed. And we do a snack time too, because otherwise they just eat all day the snacks. I'm like, no, snack time is at 3 and 10 a.m. That's it.
See, my mom had a different strategy, similar maybe outcome, in that she bought a bushel of apples and like a bushel of potatoes. And she's like, you could eat those till you puke. I don't care. You can't. You just eat. You want to eat 10 apples? Go ahead. It's self-correcting behavior anyhow. You'll have diarrhea tomorrow. You want to eat baked potatoes in the microwave all day? Knock yourself out, right? And so my kids have a pre-printed list on the fridge, a handwritten sticky note of the pre-approved snacks you don't have to ask me for, which is like, there's a bag of carrots, there's a bag of apples, right? There's a couple of those things, and it's like, you want to eat carrots? I don't care if you eat carrots all day. Go for it.
Oh, I mean, this.
You can only eat so many carrots before you give up when you're 5, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So if they want to eat 2 carrots, okay. You want to eat carrots and hummus for 2 hours? Go for it. It's so healthy. It's a lot of fiber and vitamins. Knock yourself out. I'm not going to let you eat junk, but I don't have junk in the house. But I put a pre-approved list, and every time they come to me, I'm like, no, we already had this meeting. Nope, I don't do snack meetings anymore. The pre-approved list was in the meeting notes from last week. It's on the fridge. Go get whatever. And if you ate it all, then there isn't any. Yeah. Sorry, there's no carrots. Don't want to tell you ate them all.
Oh, I love it. Ooh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay, Clint, that was this. So much to take out of this. And I appreciate, again, your perspective on businesses, entrepreneurs, but also the family end of it too. And I appreciate you helping us to navigate through this. I gotta say, like Clint said, we are not trying to be cruel and unusual to those that this altered things. Deaths happened, complete things that changed. Not that. But in perspective of if it just became uncomfortable for you, to just have the right perspective even coming out of this. And maybe you haven't had the perspective you wanted up until this point, but now you get to choose. So choose what you're going to do with the information you have and how you're going to look on it. and make sure to offer your perspective to your friends and family and your other business owners and your other entrepreneurs about, like Clint said, somebody coming in from the outside and going, oh my gosh, this is really great. And you could go, wait, why? And learn about why that is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else you can offer our listeners as encouragement?
I think that if there's ever been a time to reset whatever it is in your world you want to reset. You want to repaint your house purple? Do it. It's not weird right now. Nope. You want to lose weight or take up running or join a chess club or have pen pals? It's fair game. No one's gonna say a word about it. You're not gonna be judged for any sort of improvement. So this is, if you've been waiting for that weird moment to start your blog, write the books, take up jogging, boy, this is maybe in our whole lifetime the single best moment to sort of dive in for that self-improvement stuff. So I say jump on that. I
totally agree. And the biggest time when you will experience the least amount of friction.
Yeah. No one's going to say anything. You can literally just dream up anything. And they're like, cool.
Right. People are even more in their head. So they're like, okay, fine, you're doing that. Great. I'll be supportive. And they're moving on to their thing. So it's a perfect time to pivot and make large decisions. Totally agree. Thank you, Clint, for coming on. Until next time, encouragers, we got this. I know how you can start executing on all the things that God has equipped you to do. You can pick up my book at theencouragerpodcast.com and check out the store complete with book, journal, and the master course. Also, make sure to check out the resources tab where you'll get a hold of all the PDFs from the podcast. Thank you for tuning in, encouragers. Remember to subscribe so it's automatically on your phone. And please rate and review me. We got this, encouragers.